Hey, hello, fellow musicians, composers, and teachers. It's Mr. Mike Taylor. This video is about the memorization process. It is important for all instrumentalists to memorize his or her music, especially for performance. For young students, I suggest memorizing something simple that you are very familiar with. Nursery rhymes, such as Mary Had a Little Lamb, Yankee Doodle, Old MacDonald, Row, Row, Row Your Boat are nice examples of songs that most kids are familiar with even at a very young age. Before you even start taking piano, guitar, violin, whatever lessons, most children grow up, mom singing these songs. You hear these songs in the car, to and from places. You see them in your videos that you watch at home, special movies and things like that. Nursery rhymes are a great way for students to start memorizing their music. Most of my students memorize the popular songs from Monster Book 1, John Thompson Monster Book 1. So Mary Had a Little Lamb, most kids memorize. Row, Row, Row Your Boat, Yankee Doodle, Old MacDonald. Most students get excited when he or she can play these songs from memory. As they advance, the music gets more complicated and it becomes a little bit harder to memorize. I suggest that you start with simple melodies, play the song with the music in front of you, with the book in front of you, 5 to 6 times in a row, and then try to repeat the process with the same song 5 to 6 times in a row without the music in front of you. See how much of the music you can recall from memory. If there's a section you're having difficulty memorizing, work on that section alone, again, with the book in front of you. And study it like you're studying a test, like you're studying spelling words or your numbers or colors or anything like that to help you memorize your music. Singing your melodies is also an important and vital tool for memorizing music, okay? For more advanced students who are working out of Alfred Adult Book 1, for example, the theme from Beethoven's Ode to Joy is a fine example for memorization. It's within the first couple of pages of the book and it is for the right hand only. So if it's a theme you're familiar with, like Ode to Joy, for older students, it is easy to memorize if you can sing it and play it back. Jingle Bells is another example. There are plenty of examples in Alfred Adult Book 1. Again, as the material progresses in difficulty, it will be more complicated, become more complex to memorize the material. So what I suggest when you start memorizing your music as an adult student, older beginners, 12 and up, say the letter names out loud as you're playing your song. Again, same process. Practice with the music in front of you 5 to 6 times in a row, and then try to repeat the material the same amount of times without the music in front of you. Again, if you're having trouble memorizing one section, isolate just that section of music. Could be one measure, could be just one group of notes. Isolate just that one section of music. Repeat it to yourself, play it over and over and over again with the music. Record yourself playing it with your phone, or if you have a digital instrument at home or a tablet, any way you can record yourself playing it. Listen to other people playing it, have me play it for you. Record me playing it during your lessons. Go home, repeat the process, listen to the tune you're working on. Ode to Joy is the example I'm using right now. Listen to just this part. If you have to repeat that part a dozen times in a row, eventually you will memorize it and your fingers will memorize where to go. So now I'm talking about muscle memory. For more advanced students, out of Adult Book 1 getting into Adults Book 2 and 3, again, the material intensifies and becomes even more complex. At this point, I really suggest that you have a really good concept and grasp of the music theory of the material that's in front of you, the key of music that you're in, the scale that fits within that key of music, and the primary chords that go with the song that you're working on. A fine example from Alfred Book 3 is in the Hall of the Mountain King. Is something we've all heard before. I played it for a little kid yesterday and she knew the whole thing. I said, eventually you can learn it, kiddo. And that also gets students and spiders. So anyway, getting back to memorizing a piece like In the Hall of the Mountain King, if you can sing it, chances are you can memorize it. And this is another really good example because one, it's exciting to play, which will give you incentive to practice it. And two, it's so well known. It's ingrained in our memory from a very early age. And it's not overly complicated. The other thing that's nice about this example is that it's extremely repetitive. Memorize the patterns. Memorize how many times just that part occurs. Could occur 4 times, 6 times, a dozen times. If you memorize that it occurs X amount of times, your fingers will automatically know what to do and how often you have to play just this part. So memorizing patterns and how often a pattern occurs in music is vital, okay, for all musicians playing any instrument. Piano is a little more complex than some instruments because most of the time both hands are doing something different simultaneously. Really cool example. When you get more advanced and when you get out of book 3, the last piece in book 3, of course, is Moonlight Sonata. This can be much, much, much harder to memorize. I suggest that you practice it a zillion times in a row with the music and that you use the same finger pattern every single time. Eventually, it becomes muscle memory. For myself, when I'm learning complex material by Beethoven, Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Liszt, whoever, excuse me, I'll start to analyze the music right away. I'll apply music theory to the chords, passages, to the phrases, to the music sentences that occur. I look for patterns. I know my key signature. I know the key that I'm in. And I already have an idea before I even play the piece of what I'm to expect, say if I'm in the key of C minor or D major, etc. So what I'll do is I'll look at the material. I'll first memorize the music theory. I'll memorize the pattern of how often something occurs, and I'll practice it in a very diligent manner over and over and over and over again in the same way, in the same fashion. I'll practice it the same way every day with and without the metronome, and eventually it becomes muscle memory. Part of the memorization is knowing how the piece sounds. I listen almost exclusively to classical music. Somewhere in the 90-95 percentile of what I listen to is classical pieces. I've been listening to them for over 20 years now, since my freshman year in high school. And I know these pieces very, very intimately. So if I'm going to learn a piece by Chopin or Brahms, it's something that I've already known for many, many years, and it's ingrained in my inner being, in my inner self. So I already know what it sounds like. This is vital for my memorization process, okay? I take it slow. I do one step at a time. Depending on the complexity of the piece, I usually memorize things relatively quickly. You know, for example, it takes me about, it's maybe a little slower than, say, a professional concert pianist, but maybe 2 weeks to a month to memorize a couple of pages of music, and that's working diligently 5, 6, 7 days a week on the same piece over and over and over again. Anyway, anytime you guys have seen me perform at recitals, I never have music in front of me. It's always up here and in here and in here. If you practice it the same way every single time, it will become muscle memory. So, things to remember. Young students start with a melody, a nursery rhyme that you're familiar with. Older beginner students, 12 and up, start with a melody that you're also familiar with that's a little more engaging for you, something like Ode to Joy. You don't really want to play Mary Had a Little Lamb if you're 12. For more advanced students, working out of adult books 2 and 3, select pieces that you're familiar with, as an example. And for more advanced students, learn and know your theory and recognize the patterns. Okay, so I hope to talk to you all soon. Tomorrow is Halloween. I hope you all have a healthy and safe and happy Halloween. Eat your candy and brush your teeth. It's important. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.